morning. Today is the 30th of December, although this is not the final video I'll be making this year. And it's time for yet another not particularly interesting, very vague and probably quite boring vlog. So back in February, I made a video about the surprisingly high price of small automatic petrol cars. It's something that a lot of channels on YouTube talk about. Chop's Garage talks about this. Shifting Metal talks about this. And even in my own experience of dealerships that I do videos with, they say the same thing. Small automatic petrol cars are one market segment really at the moment where prices seem to be increasing across the board, and although the market is down quite considerably actually in most segments, and it's fallen quite considerably since sort of summer, small automatic petrol cars are still quite expensive. It seems to be what people want at the moment. You know, they want something not television zone compliant. They want something that's cheap to run in terms of the servicing and the tax, and it just seems to be that that's what people want. Also, fewer and fewer people at the moment seem to be wanting to get a manual driving license. It's easier to pass a test with an automatic car. You don't have to learn on a manual, and this seems to be pushing up the prices. And London in particular is the place where the cars are the most expensive, because you think about it, more people want to drive an automatic in a small car in London anyway. Electric cars are still relatively expensive for what they are. The prices of those are falling now due to oversupply, but the small automatic petrol cars in some cases go for far more money than you'd imagine. And I can tell you this from experience, because a couple of days ago I did a job for a client in London, and she wanted a small automatic petrol car. The budget was £5,000. Obviously that is a sensible second-hand reviews budget, and so I did my best to help her. So she hasn't quite passed a test at the moment. She will do soon, but she needs a car for work. She's not particularly interested in really, you know, if it's a fancy car or not, and that's fine by me, because you know, a lot of the cars that I drive aren't very fancy anyway. But the budget of £5,000 doesn't actually get you anywhere near what you would imagine. If you want something with sort of less than 60,000 miles that's not really old, then you're looking at, you know, £4,000 to £5,000 for something like, I don't know, a 2012 Toyota Aygo multi-mode, or 2010 Kia Rio, or a Nissan Pixo. Before doing this search, I'd actually completely forgotten that Nissan made an automatic Pixo. They're not very common cars, and you would have seen one in the thumbnail. That's actually the one that she eventually chose, was the automatic Pixo. Those actually, when you can find them, there aren't many for sale at all really. Can be a very good alternative to something like a C1 or an 107 or an Aygo. And one of the reasons for that is the automatic gearbox within the 107 and the Aygo and the C1 is actually in robotised manual, and it feels, as many of these do, the Fiat 500 automatics are the same as this as well, and so some of the Peugeot 208s. But it's like a how do I put this? It's like a learner driver who doesn't know how to change gear particularly well, and it's not a very pleasant experience. So we did look at a 107, and the dealership just seemed to be churning these things out. One we were going to look at was a 2012 Aygo, but they sold it by the time we actually got there, and they had this 107. The problem with 107 was that it was a little bit over the budget, but also it had quite a few advisors on the MOT, and it just failed on various things. And even so, I had a look at it, and there was a very poorly cracked tyre on it, and other things which sort of alerted my attention to the fact we weren't going to buy the car. But a very jerky sort of thing to drive, and not particularly pleasant. You can use the gear lever to actually put it into a manual mode, but it just thinks, well, why, if you're doing that, why don't you just buy a manual one? Because the gearbox is about 1,000,000 times better in a manual C1, iGo, or 107. So I didn't buy that one. The other one looked at, apart from the Pixo, was a 2010 Kia Rio 1.4. Now, this is not the generation of Rio that I've driven on Sensible Secondhand Reviews. In fact, the very first episode of Sensible Secondhand Reviews was a Mark III Rio. This is the one before that, and they are actually known for being very, very dependable. They're a bit sort of weird in the sense that the indicator stalk's on the right. It's sort of very typical of older Korean cars are like that, and you know, the next one was rather a different sort of prospect. But the earlier Rios, Mark I, that I have driven as well, is even sort of more weird in that respect. They just feel like very sort of old-fashioned, you know, cars from the Pacific Rim, and there's a certain charm to it actually in comparison with a Pixo or a 107. They feel like a proper car. They've actually got some sort of performance. They've got, you know, more than 3 cylinders, and the car drove absolutely fine. They're actually fairly nice to drive, those cars. It's just that if you think about the running costs of one of those, with things like the tax and the insurance and the fuel economy, they're not as good as something like a 107. So that's why the 107 sometimes are more expensive, which is madness. Pixos though, because no one's heard of them, and rather than this funny robotised manual they've got in them, they've actually got a conventional 4-speed automatic. It was used in the K12 generation Micra. It was actually on sale at the time that Pixel was released in 2009. The biggest problem to be aware of with one of those is actually the fact that they weren't under seal from the factory, which I will cover in an episode of No Budget Reviews, because I did actually have a chance to film that car the day after that we'd managed to secure it. That my client was so happy with it that she said, you can put it on your channel. And I said, oh, that's very kind. So there will be an episode on that particular car coming soon as well. The most obvious car, and actually the one that my client initially told me that was her favourite, was not the Pixo, it was a Micra, which would have been the K13 generation. Now, I did find one within budget, a base model, the Vizier I think they're called, and the Viziers don't have air conditioning. You can get one within the budget, it's an early pre-facelift one, but the other thing is they've got a CVT in them, and it's not necessarily the end of the world having a CVT gearbox in a car. I mean, they can be quite economical. It's just that if anything goes wrong with your CVT gearbox, it's not really the easiest thing to do. They've got steel drive belts in them, and they might have to be replaced, and you don't know quite when it's going to happen. It's not like a conventional 4-speed like in the Pixo or in the Rio, where you just service the gearbox, specify an interval, and maybe change a filter and that kind of thing, clean it up, and it's okay for a while. The CVTs and the automated manual gearboxes, they tend to be fitted to cars for reasons of cost, and also I think they're lighter than traditional torque converter automatic. So with the automated manuals, like on the 107 C1 and iGo, and also Fiat 500s and things like that, because they've got a clutch in them, the clutch can wear out, and so, you know, if your clutch is worn out in your automated manual, and you've got the same sort of issues with a normal manual, you've got to change it. And on a 107 C1 or an iGo, the clutch on a manual one's really, really easy and cheap to change. I mean, some places I've heard do it in half an hour, which is crazy. It's one of the quickest clutch changes on a front wheel drive car. So, you know, that's obviously something to bear in mind if you're looking at a manual one of those. But the automatic one, it's not really difficult. It's not like some clutch changes in cars that, you know, require a load of things to come out. It's not that bad, but it's just a lot more difficult than it is in the manual one. It's not quite as easy as you'd imagine, and so the clutch will be changing just like a, you know, manual car when it wears out. There's no interval or anything for changing the clutch on one of those, and so you just got to bear this sort of in mind, that just because something has this sort of reputation and, you know, for some reason has this price premium, and I don't really quite understand that with these, and anyway, why they're so much more expensive than, say, like a Pixo. for Suzuki Alto, because Altos are the same car as a Pixo. But it's just a sort of reputation, is that no one's heard of Pixos in particular, and so they tend to be a bit cheaper. One that I saw from my client had 13,000 miles on it, which was good. It drives like a new car. So yes, still very, very high prices for the small automatic petrol cars, particularly in London. And I don't know how much this is going to go for. It seems to be that dealerships that I know of are stocking, small petrol cars, particularly automatics, if they can find them. But the biggest problem is that they can't. And so, that place we went to, which had the Igo and then the 107, and the Igo had gone before we got there, that place can just keep selling them, and people who are less thorough than someone like me and looking at the MOT history every single time we go to see them and looking at the general condition of the car, they just wouldn't know any better that maybe that's one to avoid, because you need quite a lot of money spent on that to bring it up to standard. But that's why I have a job anyway, and I do enjoy my job. I get to do some wonderful things. Anyway, thank you ever so much indeed once again for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like this video, leave a comment below, and we shall see you again for some more tales from the motoring world.